So have you got a joke for us today?
Well, thanks very much for starting with that one.
Yeah.
Have I got a joke for you? So I'm not going to give you one of my own jokes.
Right, okay.
Because, you know, we'll be here all day.
Yeah.
But my favourite joke from childhood... yeah, you can pay me for that.
Yeah.
My favourite joke from childhood is... Man goes into the doctor's.
Right, okay.
He's got a chip sticking out his nose.
Right.
And a carrot sticking out his ear.
Right.
And the doctor says, I can tell what's wrong with you. You're not eating properly. Everyone has that reaction until you think about it, but I love it. It just makes me laugh.
Okay.
It's quite sick.
Yeah.
And now I'm going red.
Right. Well, today's video is sponsored by Executive Claims. If you've had an accident recently, give them a phone. The link will be in the bio. Also sponsored by Tax Assist Accountants. For all of your small to medium business needs, give them a shout as well. They will also be linked. So thanks to them.
So thanks for sponsoring, Adam. So today's guest, guys, we've got Yvonne Hughes. So the connection, how do we know Yvonne? Our last guest, Alan Hiddleston. He sort of put us in contact with her and said that she'd be a great guest to have on the show. She's a comedian that sort of battled with sort of cystic fibrosis. So it should be a good show today.
So your story, Blair was telling me a wee bit about your backstory and things like that. So it seems really interesting. Let's just as we always do. What was life like growing up like with cystic fibrosis and just your childhood in general?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was born, I wasn't very well. I was called a kind of failure to thrive child, which is kind of came from more recent discussions. My mum knew there was something wrong with me, and went to get me tested and get told about when I was 3 months old that I had cystic fibrosis. I already had a big sister at this point who was 2. My mum was only 20. There was no social media, no internet, nothing, and it was basically go home and we'll get her on some medication. So life growing up was pretty normal. I did okay at school. I had friends, lots of friends, and I think round about when I was about 8, I started to realise I was a wee bit different from people in my class. I would have time off, or I would have time in hospital, and I remember asking my mum what was wrong with me, and she says, you've got something wrong with your lungs and your digestive system. So just to explain a wee bit about cystic fibrosis, it is a genetic disease that you're born with. There's no cure. And it affects the sort of flow of kind of water and salt in all your cells. So over time, your lungs and all your insides get clogged up with mucus, and over time it makes it difficult to breathe and to digest food. So from a very early young age, I remember taking a tablet at lunchtime, because I'd go to school, come home for lunch, and go back to school, come home again obviously. But I was able to come home for lunch because my granda used to eat my lunch, and I would take these tablets, wolf down my lunch and run back to school, and I was sick a lot of the times. And it was just the effectiveness of the tablet. And my mum used to say, you need to sit down, you need to digest your food. And I'm not really understanding what that means. So that was a big part of my childhood, kind of tummy problems, and maybe once a year or twice a year I would be flat out exhausted. I was tireder, but I think when you're young you don't really can understand that. So I went to Brownies. Later I got into running, which was great. So any form of exercise today is more encouraged. Back when I was in the 70s and 80s, they didn't really know that exercise could help kids. So we were never really encouraged. We were more encouraged to eat well. I was a very fussy eater. I think I used to love burnt fish fingers for about 3 months on it.
Smiley faces and stuff.
As long as I was eating, alright.
How burnt are we talking, like black or like?
Black, proper black. Sometimes on both sides. Like today we have the smoke alarms going off. But I haven't touched a fish finger in years. And so I think going into high school, still, attended school well, and as I say, maybe once a year I would be off with a severe chest infection, which could be like pleurisy or pneumonia. So I've had that a couple of times. in my teenage years, I had a couple of very serious chest infections that would result in you thinking that things aren't going to be very good. Yeah, so in hospital a lot. We made friends with a lot of people who had cystic fibrosis. That was then, and now we're not able to mix at all, which a lot of people, when they hear that, it's quite hard to understand. Obviously you can get siblings with cystic fibrosis, you can get families where cousins have cystic fibrosis, and I can explain a wee bit about the
that's why it's the sort of genetics that
the genetics as well. So I'll maybe come back to that if we can. And so what was happening when we were young is we were all mixing together. So probably like the virus today, you're passing bugs between you. So there was a time when research showed that it wasn't good because some patients were losing their lives and they shouldn't have been. And there's been documented evidence on this, and I would refer people to the Cystic Fibrosis Trust website for any information on cross-infection policies, and so that's what we call it. So it's it sounds really harsh, it's like a policy of segregation. They say we can't mix with each other.
So you were sort of almost aware of that before sort of COVID hit, sort of in a sense, with the people that you were sort of pals with that had cystic fibrosis, sort of the social distance and
absolutely. So they say that people with cystic fibrosis are actually natural isolators. You know, we know when to keep away from people. So for us, although in bringing it up to the virus, most people with cystic fibrosis were probably put in the shielding list, and we were told to keep away from people, but I think we knew how to manage that. And I was could keep myself busy as well. So life was pretty normal. One big sister, mum and dad, always out working. We didn't dwell on my condition, and I think later, as I got older, that's when things start to change. When you start to take on more responsibility for your own medications, you can sometimes take a dip, and that certainly happened to me.
No worries. So obviously sort of the research into sort of cystic fibrosis, and obviously as medication sort of progressed through the years, the sort of average sort of mortality rate has sort of increased, if I'm correct in saying. Sort of when you were younger, did that affect you, that you might not live to the sort of age that you sort of desired or sort of wanted to?
Well, I don't think anyone thinks that I want to live to a certain age. I think when I was growing up, it was funny, for some reason I never knew my life expectancy. It wasn't discussed in front of me. And I remember being in high school and people sort of talking, and I'd only told close friends that I had the condition, because as far as I was aware, it was something I did outside of school. And so when I was growing up, 16, there weren't a lot of people living past 16, and then gradually that goes up to 21 because the treatments get better, and then gradually it's like 23, 25, So I always was on the cusp of the life expectancy, but then I started to lose friends with the disease. So the people I grew up with, I met in the hospitals. I think, if I met 20 people, there's maybe only 2 or 3 alive just now. So the very first friend I lost was at age 19. And I suppose I never really believed that I had a condition that would kill me early. But when Mark died and I went to his funeral and the things we were saying about cystic fibrosis, the place was packed out, and I was 19, and my mum was with me and holding on to me. We all stood at the back because, as I say, the place was packed. So that was quite a leveler, and I didn't know how to deal with it. We had no counsellors, we had no one to talk to about that,
Especially like nowadays, there's sort of people that you can sort of speak to, sort of that sort of thing, and it's a lot more, I think things are a wee bit more open these days.
So you just, I mean, and this might sound a really old-fashioned thing to say, but you just put it in a wee box and you carry on, because every day, every year you're living, you think, right, okay. And then latterly, there's a median age of death, which is very young. It's 32 years old. So you could get somebody that lives to 60. I'm 48 just now. You could get somebody that lives to 20. And we're still, so they're taking all the average age of death and they're crossing it down by the number of deaths. So that's how they come out with the median age of death. So it's not good enough. You know, it's an incurable disease. There's been great changes and advances in the medication. I've been very, very lucky to be put on new drugs that have actually turned my life around recently, and I know we're going to talk about that today. And this is why I'm now doing the things I'm doing, because I've been put on these drugs. But in 2018, I was submitted by my team to go forward for it's called a double lung transplant. And the team were kind of confident that I would be seen as a good candidate, because you have to survive the operation. And it was never ever something that I felt I would really, like, that's not my life path, you know, I can't see me going through that big operation and coming out the other side, but other people have, and I was full of admiration for them. Some people actually pushed the doctors to get transplant, whereas I was avoiding it. However, sadly, the team at the Newcastle service said that I wasn't a viable candidate. And after we left, there was too many complications at the time, and after we left, I just thought, right, I'm just going to be making memories now with my family. We went away, mum, dad and my mum's dog, Max, went away on a wee holiday, and it was a beautiful holiday, but I wanted to protect my mum and dad, and I wanted to write letters to my family and say, right, you need to look after my mum and dad after this, because I was on borrowed time at this point. And then these drugs come along and it changes everything.
So I was like, so see with that, between that and, you know, your friend Mark passing away, did that change the way you see life? Like, as you're saying, you know, we kind of touched on it there, you've started to say, you know, I'm going to make memories, and did that change? You know, did you start thinking, right, okay, I'm going to make every day count from then?
I don't think I think I had a jolt. I had a realisation that this disease was going to kill me. I was at uni when Mark died, and I carried on through uni. You know, it didn't. I think maybe just more my attitude to dealing with the disease changed. That I was more aware that I would have setbacks in life. One thing I did do was it made me realise I didn't have the career I wanted. I kind of wanted to, you know, go out, travel the world, but my very first job out of uni, I lost because I fell ill and I was off for too long a time. So they said to me, look, reluctantly, we have to let you go. And I was only in about 3 months. So that was a bit of a bummer. So although Mark's death was like a line in my life, it was making me realise I had something wrong with me and it was going to kill me or shorten my life. I never ever thought, I suppose in your darker moments you think, when's it going to happen to me? When am I going to feel, you know, that's been done? How is it going to work? Because I knew that I felt strong inside, I knew that I felt full of life and energy, you know, there was great things happening, but I had to re-navigate my working life. And I took on a couple of jobs that were quite stressful, but then I realised that stress and how your body took that on was one of the biggest things in life that I had to change, and that was more of my pathway through to get me to now.
Oh, right, okay. And so, you know, you touched on the kind of medicines used that you know, it's an incurable disease, as you say, so it's not going anywhere, but in your mind, what's the best way to kind of cope with it and to live with it and to live the best life?
So, I think I kind of mentioned so it's a genetic disease. You get it from both your mum, both your dad. There's a 1 in 4 chance of having the disease, meaning that you can have the disease from both carriers. You can not, both carriers might not pass on the gene, and then you can have a gene from the mum and a gene from the dad. So it's a 1 in 4 chance of having the disease. So when you're put on medication from birth, you're put on treatments from birth. Physiotherapy is the main one that you would have to take to clear out your tubes from all the mucus. You're supposed to do that twice a day. I'll say to you now, I was never a twice a day woman, and that was a big struggle because you've always felt guilty about not being able to do the treatments. You know, you were out running, you were going to school, you were participating in activities, and you were doing that as you were getting older as well. So you have to take your treatments. You know, I think without the treatments I wouldn't be here today, obviously. I mean, we had the first sort of watershed drug in 1989, and since 1989 to 2013 there was nothing.
Right, okay.
But even the 2013 drug was only for a certain population of the cystic fibrosis community. And then all of a sudden we've got this other drug, so I'd say maybe about 20, when did I put this drug last year? So one watershed moment in the treatment, which was a nebulized drug that could thin the mucus and help you bring it up more.
Okay. So
to 2020. So it's a
22 years.
Long time coming for people to. So the treatments that you have treat the symptoms. So you get a chest infection, you get treated. You get stomach problems, you get treated. But the drug that I'm on just now actually treats the disease at the cell level. So it tries to correct it. I won't go into too much science. As I do say, check the Cystic Fibrosis website for more information on how these drugs work. They're called gene modifying drugs, so they will try and correct the fault at its root. What causes the salt in the water not to transfer.
It's more reactive than sort of. It's more proactive than a sort of reactive sort of thing. A wee bit more.
And what it's doing is correcting me to be a kind of normal person. So there was a period of adjustment where I was learning who Yvonne was. Because I was so used to dealing with Yvonne as not being able to meet friends. My life was really narrowing up to 2018, 2019. I couldn't be relied upon to, book your birthday, go out for drinks for your birthday, or meet your parents. I'd be like, I'll do that. And then the day, 2 hours before, I'd be like, I can't come. So I let a lot of people down over the years because I just was exhausted, and you knew that if you pushed yourself too far, you're either going to fall into hospital. And there was a time where every 2 months I was on additional intravenous drugs, which is just antibiotics. You take over a 2-week intensive period, sometimes in hospital, sometimes at home, you're able to do them. But it's quite hard going and live your normal life as well. So take your treatments. Also, you need to know yourself. I think a lot of people would say if I'm a really strong resilience, we can bounce back. I think a lot of people would say if can have it as part of who they are. A lot of us say, it doesn't define me. It has defined me in a way because it affected my career, it affected me to have children, it affected partnership, relationships. But in the same way, I'm still me, and I know myself very well. So I think in a good way, the one thing I did do over the years was manage stress. What would happen is if I took on too much, or say burning the candle at both ends. My parents used to say, and my mum used to always say, you've lost your wee sparkle in your eye, I know you're not well. And that took me a long time to kind of adjust to right, I need to learn to say no. And what I would say to people is, I really want to come, but I might not be able to. And another watershed moment in life was the smoking ban as well, 2005. Because
they didn't smoke inside like public places and stuff.
You won't be used to that, So we used to go out and you'd come home and I would be coughing and breathless the next day. I'd be exhausted. I wouldn't eat. I just want to stay in bed, and you can obviously lose weight doing that because your food intake's really important. And then all of a sudden you could go out to a pub and be like, and I actually thought I was going to turn into an alcoholic, but I couldn't afford it. All of a sudden you could do all this stuff and not be clogged up with smoking.
Because even back then, I wasn't really, probably weren't really accustomed to it at all, but you can even see old videos or films and stuff, like Only Frozen Lost and stuff, just be like how are they smoking? It'd be so easy.
You're probably smoking in the TV studios.
I know.
It's interesting that because you look at it as like, obviously for you it was such a bad thing, but you'll speak to other old guys, I remember you, now you need to go outside for a fag. Everyone's like, the pubs are finished. Everyone's saying that pubs are finished, nobody's going to go out if you can't smoke in.
I know, you are very lucky. So, but the only thing was the places used to really stink. But yeah, so we had that as well, which really opened up things in a kind of good way. You know, I love going out clubbing and stuff. So I think for me, so your treatments is important. Your kind of mental health attitude to yourself, and learning how to manage your stresses so they don't impact on your lungs was, I think, what's got me here. As in, like, I've had to take the right decisions to phone the hospital and say, like, I need the treatment. I've had to say no to friends. I've had to pull back. I've had to just have weekends in bed. You know, like a lot of people living with medical conditions will understand that. It's not just CF related. But you really have to, you know, I suppose we've got social media now, we've got groups that we can talk to. And I know there's a lot of kind of mental health and wellbeing support these days, but I've rarely touched on that unless there's been something quite, you know, dark going on. I have had periods of depression where, you know, I don't know if it's been entirely related to having CF, because like you said, you don't know what it's like not to have it, but when I've been in depression, it's more about my life, as in the things I want to do that I can't do, the things I wanted to do but I've not been able to do.
You've just tried to sort of pace yourself and maybe not do too much, so instead of maybe doing 3 things, you do 2 or 1, just so that you're
or
not...
none. Or none. So, I think there's a thing called adherence to drugs, and if my CF psychologist ever heard me say that word, adherence, she would give me a slap in the wrist. But I used to always say, I'm not very good at adhering to this treatment because it's hard. And what was nice is they recognised that within your day you could be doing sometimes up to 2 hours of treatments over the course of the day, and you know, nebulisers in the morning, nebulisers in the afternoon, nebulisers in the evening, and all the things that are involved with that. So it's tricky, but you have to do it every single day, even Saturday, Sunday, no day off. But it's definitely more manageable now.
Good stuff. So obviously you sort of into sort of comedy. What sort of got you into that sort of thing?
God, right. So in 2019, I was back living with my mum.
Right.
I'd had a failed relationship. I'd had the health problems. I don't think I had any money. Everything was crap. Everything was crap. And I always wrote things, but I never wrote funny things because no one ever told me I was funny. And but what I recognised was the 2 things that got me through life were music. Obviously my pals and everything, but my family, but music and comedy. Right from when I was young, I always stayed in a Friday night to watch Channel 4 comedy. I sought out comedies, but it was sitcoms, you know. I didn't particularly look at stand-up comedians so much later. And then I always went to comedy nights and really loved it. And I just kind of was looking at courses to do because I was sitting in my bedroom in my mum's house, like a stupid old woman, and I was like, I need to do something here. And I still wasn't feeling great. I think I was on one of the gene modifying drugs that was kind of just ticking me over. So I wanted to write, I wanted to do something creative. So I just went online, I went to the Centre for Lifelong Learning at Strathclyde Uni, and I looked up writing courses, and it came up Comedy 1 and Comedy 2.
Also that's an actual course?
There wasn't an actual course. So it was organised by Centre for Lifelong Learning and ran by an amazing comedian called Viv G, who is well known.
That's someone that actually got mentioned, flashback to the first ever podcast with Ronny Black. He mentioned
I think a lot of people have done this course. And it was phenomenal. And I've never found my people in life. My people are people with CF, but you know, I didn't have a normal conventional life. You know, I've never got married, had kids and that kind of life. I've always been quite kind of quirky and a wee bit offbeat, and just never could find, you know, my friends are great, you're all great, but you know, I just never found my community, because I wasn't linked to any communities through kids or anything. And I did the course, and I was very quiet in class, but I was just learning as much as I could. So an 8-week course in January 2020 what year am I? 2019, so nearly 2 years, gosh. 2019 January, and then on March 13th, I did my first 5 minutes, and it went really well. I wasn't the best, but I wasn't the worst, and I got a couple of compliments afterwards from people I didn't know, and I just felt great.
So where was that one?
So it was in Just Below in Mango in Surrey Street. And then a week later, what happened? We went into lockdown. So that was it. I had one gig, and I just thought, and I had all these plans to contact these clubs, because I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to do all these open spots. And I didn't even know the language. I know what an open spot now is. I know what a mid spot, a high, a headliner, and it was just horrible, but again, you just think, oh well, that's fine, I'll just stay on for 3 months or 3 weeks. I think they thought it was going to be a few weeks, and then we'll all get back into it.
We'll plan something next month.
Yeah, we'll sort it out.
Yeah.
So I had a really good script, and I really liked it, and I think that's a big part of why I did well, because I liked what I'd written and stuff, and I performed as myself that first night, and then Viv got in touch. Because I was asking her about, whether she was going to do any more courses. So then we decided that there was worth doing something online.
Okay.
So we did this second course online, but comedians were all out of work. They weren't working at this point, and there was nothing going on. There was a few random videos of comedians who staring out the window, like, I've got nothing to do.
Facebook videos.
And quite kind of poor comedy at that time.
Because actually, going back to I guess with Ronny Black, he always does Facebook videos, and he's out walking the dog daily, and it's just funny. It's funny stuff.
Yeah, that's
just walking up down the street. I remember he bumped into my dad once. He featured in one of them. He was just like, there's Jamaica.
I seen Gary Fawkes as well. He was really struggling with it, and he was like obviously done different jobs and stuff like that. So it's good now that everything's open again. Are you kind of looking forward to getting back out there and doing the shows?
Yeah, well, we have been doing them, but so we did Zoom stuff last summer, and then I started doing this character online, and it's good fun. And then I took it out onto the stage. So at the moment, I was in Edinburgh just on Wet Tuesday there. I was at Top Banana Night at Monkey Barrel, which was fantastic. I was a wee bit nervous, but we did okay. I did the character. So I had a 10-minute set down to a 5-minute set, so you have to pace it, and you have to still get the essence of the character in it. And then I'm on Red Raw the end of the month, which I'm really excited about, first time doing that. So it's funny, because although with all these gigs, there's only been about 2 of them in Glasgow that I've done. So I'm just starting out, I'm new, but I absolutely love it.
That's so good to hear. People our age, we're in our 20s and stuff like that. People get to 20, 30 and feel lost, like they don't know what they want to do. So it's great to hear you. You said you're 48, so just 46 when you started. So it's never too late. There's always just keep trying different things, and just being not being scared to fail. So like you see your actual material then on stage. Do you talk about cystic fibrosis, or do you kind of just try and focus on just general?
I mean, I'm hilarious without talking about that. It's weird, doesn't it? Because what do? And you get some people that can really put across things in a kind of humorous way. I mean, there's people talking about mental health, and I think mental health and identity are quite big tropes within the comedy stuff at the moment. I just kind of wanted to be daft and stupid. So I have tried to write stuff about funny stories that had happened to me, and I've got some of them written down, about having CF and this happened, or that was embarrassing, but no, I don't go on stage and say, hi, I've got cystic fibrosis. I know you don't mean that, but no, it doesn't touch it at all. I mean, there are some things that I've maybe written about. I do this joke where I talk about, in the character, trying to get blood out of me, and that 5 doctors tried, and not one of them was successful in getting blood. And then I say that's not even the most pricks I've ever had in a day. So you like that one, so you like the first one. Okay. I say where we're at, but that was based on true fact, because one time in hospital I had 3 doctors come in, and people with CF have notoriously poor veins, because over the life we had a lot of vein access for trying to get drugs through it. And one of them ran away. One of the doctors tried to get blood out of me, and basically his hands were shaking so much. He's a junior doctor, I'll never forget it. And he just ran away and left. He didn't say, I'll go and get someone else, and he just ran away. So I was like, and then this girl came in and she was like, no, it was like that. I think he did go away and call his mum and go, I can't get blood out of this woman's veins. You know, and I was much younger then. And then, you know, it was funny, so that formed the basis of this joke, Tricks in a Day, because, you know, because I remember my mum and dad coming in later, and I think I've always kept a sense of humour when I've been in hospital. And I remember my mum coming in later and I said, God, three different doctors tried to get blood out of me blood out of me today. And then I said to my mum, that's maybe the most pricks I've ever had. And she was, oh, that's right, you know. So I'm like, right. So that kind of informed the comedy that I do.
So see when you're coming up with your jokes, do you sit and purposely try and write things down, or do you just through life you find funny stories or funny things happen and like that one, and then you write it down? How do you approach it?
So when we did the fifth course, there's certain structures to get material that I still use. So you've got that structure. But recently I just wrote a 5-minute set based on chats with my partner.
Right, okay.
We just I talked about, Halloween was coming up. I was doing a gig in a place called Bauhaus in Partick, and the Bauhaus is actually like a German art and design movement.
Right, okay.
So then you talk about movement. So this, in fact, the CF kind of informs that again, because you know what a movement is.
Something that's like like a sort of, not a cult, but it's like a sort of.
It's kind of like a cult, isn't it?
No, do you know what the medical term means when they ask it?
Movement, like bowel movement.
Oh, right, okay,
So I brought this kind of thing.
I thought it was more like a climate change movement.
You're right, I'm kind of group of people that like a tribe, you know, that are following this thing. However, I use it from the more scatological thing. So my process was slightly, what I did, sometimes I write at night, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, wow, I've got an idea.
Just get it down, you're like, get it while it's fresh in the head, sort of thing.
And I keep sitting, when I wake up in the middle of the night and I think of something, there always seems to be like a kind of inspiration behind it, whether it's I'm excited or I'm happy or, you know, I like being stupid, and there's always just something behind it, but I need to write it down. If I don't write it down, I fall asleep, and I think, I'll remember that. In fact, I voice recorded a couple of things last night about my dad, because I'm thinking about writing a set about me and my dad's relationship, which would be funny because he thinks he's a comedian. And so I think that's what I do. So it's based on structure. I like structure. I like to know that I can pull things from words, or I can pull things from a newspaper article, and then, or else there's a wee bit of inspiration from just life.
That's great. That's obviously quite good. You like the movement and that from the art school.
It took us a while to get that.
Well, I do. I kind of say the Bauhaus movement, and then I giggle and I say, well, you know what a movement is, don't you? And it's the doctor asks if you've got a number, if you do a number 2, and I said something about, you know, that's when they asked if it's loose or if it's formed, and then I say the movement was formed back in the 1930s by a guy called Walter Gropius, and then I think he sounds like a dodgy character from ITV2's Plebs, so you know, there's kind of just, and there's a lot in that, just looking at this, so that was written quite quickly, you know, and I quite enjoyed that. I mean, it was very light-hearted, it's not like getting, I think my own sense of it was more darker than the comedy that I produced.
The stuff that you sort of like to sort of listen to, sort of thing, is probably different than what you sort of put out there, sort of thing. But
I would like to have more edge, but you know, at the moment I'm learning. Maybe one day I'll get edge.
But that's the thing though. Like some TV shows I watch and they're just hilarious. Like Peep Show, it's just a very awkward sense of humour. But like you can just like you just love it because you're like, how do you picture yourself in that situation?
I do wonder what people think when they see my character, who's called Janet Tenage. Janet's Tenage is Janet backwards. I don't overthink it too much. I know. So I say I'm the only palindrome in comedy, and I don't really know what people think of her. Like, I don't know if they think, what's this old woman doing on stage, or do they think, are they buying into the character? I think you have to believe in it, and you have to go for it. So I'm trying my best with it.
That sort of brings us on to the next point. So have you ever done a gig where the audience was difficult to sort of work with at all?
The other night. So The Zoom gigs were really difficult because you could see their faces, but you could also see their dogs. You could see them getting up for a cup of tea. You could hear them. They were, and it was just like, oh God, they're not laughing. You know, none of them like me. And I don't know if it's a female thing or a new comedian thing, but you just think they want me off. They hate me, and it's horrible. You know, so you have to really. It's kind of going to be a bit now that I still think on stage, oh God, do these people are they even bothered about this? You know, but you have to think, they love me. And you have to keep going. A lot of people say this. Quite confident. So the other night we had 2 shows. The first show went really well. I was nervous, but the first show went really well, and it was kind of learning curve as well. The audience were really warm. And I was introduced as a new act, so give her lots of support, which was lovely, and I think I really needed it. And did the first 5 minutes fine. Then they do another show, and it was less of an audience, but they were quite quiet, and even the funnier comedians. I'm really funny. Even the more advanced comedians struggled that night. But I went on, and what I should have done, and maybe this is a learning curve. Every gig you have to say it's your first gig, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it because these people paid money and they want to see entertainment. They don't want you cowering in the background. But the second gig, I just mucked everything up. I had things out of order, and I had to go back. And I think somebody was looking like, what are you talking about? I missed a chunk out. But what I should have done during the break was look over my set again and go, right, this is fresh, even though you did that. So having the 2 in the night was the first time I'd ever done that.
That's quite a lot, especially.
So that was a lesson, and one of the lovely comedians, Nick McNeil, had emailed and said, don't worry about, like he knew I'd worked my set up and stuff, he said, don't worry about it. Nobody laughed. So that was quite, well, they did laugh, there was a few titters and stuff, but I was like, oh God, I've just mucked this up. So, but you can't blame the audience.
I know,
Do you think you were kind of complacent because you had just done it, or maybe?
I think I hadn't experienced doing 2 sets in the one night at the same set where you have to get the same energy. I think I probably was a bit complacent, and I was like, oh, I know the set,
I'm thinking the first time was fine, and you're probably thinking, oh, next one's just going to be as good, but was it the same venue? So
same venue, so they ran 2 shows in the one night, which is great for timing and for stage practice as well. So it's not necessarily an open mic night where you can go on and do new material. It's a new act night, or more established acts doing their set. So that was a learning curve. So if I ever have 2 in the one night again, I will make sure that in the break I'm learning the set again, and I'll do it.
So what are your ambitions with it then, like the comedy? Where do you want to take it?
Well, because I've been better, I've actually just gone back to full-time work after having a period of 3 years.
What is it you do?
So I'm now working for Renfrewshire. It's in Engage Renfrewshire, and I do Affordable Credit Officer, which is a new post dedicated for people who work with vulnerable groups and helping them avoid high cost credit and loan sharks. So it's a really worthwhile cause. I wanted to mention that. But so what I learned from, I've just got Red Raw, which is like, the holy grail in Glasgow. Some comedians will disagree with that, but it's your hometown, it's like the most prominent stand-up night for new acts, so I've got that. I need to get up to 20 minutes of material. I need to figure out whether I'm going to become like a kind of mid-spot or an opener. So that'll probably take, it's like having an apprenticeship really. Like you're in charge of your own path. I've got a great mentor. I work with Des McLean, who's absolute great support. I still speak to Viv G, and you see them in the circuit as well when they're performing. I was performing with Des last Saturday night, and we got a really good response. So I need to get more gigs. Just do more gigs. Keep going. Even if it's a 5 minutes here and there, be prepared to travel around, mostly at the weekend and midweek, although I can still do it. And just keep going with it, and
that's brilliant. Obviously, you're just getting experience in that as well. But I was like sort of linking back to the Zoom audiences when you said that was really difficult. I thought as well, like, we had a works night out and it was over like Teams, and it was like, it's like everyone went into their own sort of like department. So it was like process engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and then it was like a lobby after it of like everyone who was wanting to stay on it. And I went on until about 9:30, And I spoke to my boss on the Monday, she was like, yeah, I went off about that time as well. It just got very like, because there's like 27 people in like a team's call, and it's like one person can only speak at the one time. And when you're at works nights, and I remember my dad was at a Zoom call, and it was for someone's 50th, and like that was his birthday. It was all over Zoom. There was only like maybe one or two people like talking the full time, and like my dad's like, this is like, obviously went on for like 20 minutes, half an hour, but he's like, after that, he's like, I'm putting this off. You're not getting you're not sort of seeing everyone's reaction, you're not sort of like hearing the laughs really, because they don't want to sort of laugh because they have a microphone on you when you're sort of doing it over Zoom. And then the other sense is like, when you've sort of got a night out and stuff like that, you're not sort of speaking to people after it, like you're not having that interaction with like different groups of people. I was speaking to him for quite a while on that. So
you know what's interesting though, see this new metaverse they're talking about, like with Facebook. This is a bit off the topic, but it's like it's like a virtual reality. And
really?
Like, it's not really, I don't think it's 100% near there, but it is where it's going.
Right.
I think that would be interesting to see, because people could like meet and you'd be able to like say, okay, you're over there, I've got the goggles on.
I do worry about people's pictures that way.
And then what why would people even go outside?
I know. That's the people that virtual reality game. It's like, are you spending more time in your life in virtual reality, or are you just spending more time in your room?
I was talking to somebody the other day, and he was like, yeah, it's scary, man. It's like, it's quite dark. It's like,
do you know about the incels? So it's involuntary celibates. So they're talking about it's basically men that, you know,
involuntary celibacy.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it.
Because no girl wants to be with them.
Right,
but I'm imagining in the metaverse there'll be girls that'll be like that as well. You know, it'll become like a, it'll just become this kind of, we're all voluntary and celibates.
I think that's something that's very far fetched. I would still like to live my life as is, go see, meet people, and
I think that's where AI or virtual reality kind of falls flat. That where's the connection through Teams, like not Microsoft Teams as in like, but where's your team sport, your you know, going out playing football, hockey, you know, like that camaraderie.
It's just like me with like a pair of goggles on, isn't it? Like you playing tennis.
I mean, I don't know though. I think they might even get to a point where, like, I don't think maybe in the next few years, but you know, further down the line, I think they'll get to a point where you won't know the difference.
I'm just thinking about you with the goggles
That's what I'm saying.
Neck and back, and the damage you might cause. Maybe that's the point.
So obviously, sort of, do you feel that sort of through your journey, you've achieved like sort of wealth in terms of sort of mentality, or other areas you think sort of you can better yourself in that sort of sense?
I know I'm pretty perfect. No, there's always ways you can better yourself. Up until this year, nothing had fallen into place for me. Like, you know, I'm with a new partner now, and that seemed to click, and then the drugs seemed to click, and then I got a job and that clicked, and then I'm doing the comedy. I've got my nephews, and I've got my dog and my mum and dad and my sister and my friends, and all of a sudden I started to feel like maybe I feel normal now. Like, I don't know, so things have really changed. But if you'd asked me this question, maybe
2019
maybe even the beginning of this year, I'd be like, I've got a long way to go in terms of feeling mentally happy and content. I've never felt content until very recently, and that. But I think in terms of, I would still want to be. I want to write better comedy. I want to get bigger laughs. You know, I want to get fitter. I've started since I've taken these drugs. I've put on weight, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm a normal woman now. And I'm still waiting for my boobs to grow. You know, but, you know, I'm going to.
You can pay for them.
Yeah, you can pay for them. That's good advice. So yeah, I think we've always got things to go. But at the moment, I'm very happy with the things I've got, and I don't need to prove myself to anyone just now.
100%.
I'm just going to ride the way forward and see what happens.
Good stuff. Good. Well, we'll finish off with a wee fun question. The 2-scoop combo from Valentines. I'll just get the list up for you. What would you go for?
So I've been to Valentines.
And then the Governor?
Yeah.
Just mention, where is it you stay? Is
So
it?
I actually stay in Clydebank.
Do
So
you? Right,
I
okay.
don't really want to talk about this in camera, but I just go out with somebody for that neck of the
Right, okay.
They're a lovely family, but I mean, he was,
Right.
you know.
Okay.
So I like ice cream with texture in it.
Right.
I definitely like the pistachio. I'm trying to look for that on here.
I don't know. I
No.
think Alan said it's outdated menu. This one we've got. We need to get updated.
So I would definitely go for the honeycomb sensation
Right. Okay.
Okay.
That's great. That's great.
because I like that. Now my partner said he likes mint chocolate chip, and I'm like, right, we'll just buy him a Viennetta.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just going that
Grab it for
way.
a week.
Now I did hear a joke the other night about someone saying they only liked milk flavoured ice cream because vanilla was too spicy. Thank you, Christopher McCaffrey Boyd. I love that. Oh gosh, right, okay. So I wouldn't go for bubblegum, too sweet. Not cookie dough either. I never ever got the cookie dough thing.
The cookie
I
dough.
never
Cookie dough is
got
good.
it. I know.
The Biscoff. Do you get the Biscoff thing?
No.
Do you
Is
not
that
get Biscoff?
coffee?
No,
No.
Biscoff is like
It's
the
like a
the
cinnamon
you get it, yeah. You always get it with a coffee though. Yeah, small
Yeah,
very small
that,
Biscoff,
yes.
biscuit.
So that would have a kind of nutty thing. So the
yeah.
tablet's kind of similar to the. Oh, sorry, is it not then?
It's not. It's more like
Yeah, I know.
It's close to cinnamon.
It's kind of like cinnamony. Like it's almost like you can get it in a spread form.
Yeah,
So you can get it in
that's good.
next level.
Yeah.
Can eat it for
So-
days. That's good.
My own favourite is raspberry ripple.
Raspberry apple.
Yeah.
And what is it? The honeycomb one you were going to go
Yeah.
for? That's the two.
So,
that's actually,
yeah.
that's quite a decent combo.
Yeah.
I think I have had that combo in there in the summer
Mm.
with a flake and of course raspberry sauce,
Brilliant.
even though it's over the honeycomb sensation. So I like the texture of the honeycomb, but the ripple has the nice
Yes.
jelly sort of surround of the
I've
sauce
got
with
just one more question for you. I want to ask because I'm kind of into comedy, so I really
Great,
love
come on,
I
say
love
it.
watching stuff. Yeah. Who's your top 3 comedians? Like your favourites?
Oh
Are you,
wow,
like,
right, okay. So
top
there's a girl just now called Joanne McNally.
Right.
She's an Irish comedian. I'm definitely, she's mad and she's absolutely hilarious. When we were in lockdown last year, Des and Clay ran a Zoom show every Saturday night, and we got introduced to so many zany comedians. They were absolutely amazing. Jeff Innocent's another guy that I really like. So he's this sort of, I think he's about 70. He's million bigger. I don't know what age he is, but he's an older man, and he comes on stage dressed in a tracksuit. He's got bald head and everything. He's like, I'm like, and he says he's like the racist granddad. He's anything but racist. And he talks about his family and stuff. So he's great. I would tell you to look out for him. And the third one is me. Of course. Who else do I like? Well, I like I don't know, like, well, obviously I've got to say Kevin Bridges and Billy Conway. There's 4.
We actually, my 2 uncles my dad went to see Kevin Bridges at the Hydro a few years ago, and it was we didn't stop laughing. The full time we didn't stop laughing. I think I can't remember the warm-up gig who warmed up for him, but he was really good as well. It was good. Good. Anyway,
it'd be lovely to do kind of warm-up stuff for people. But so I'm happy with those 4. And big up the women comedians as well.
Good stuff. Good.
Always.
Good stuff. Anyway, well, thanks very much for coming on, Yvonne. Where can people sort of find you, sort of social media and stuff?
Yeah, well, I have an Instagram page, and it's Janet Tenage Comedy with underscores between Janet Tenage and Tenage Comedy. So follow me on there. I don't like bragging about comedy, so I don't have a lot on Facebook, but I'm Yvonne Hughes on Facebook.
Okay.